we'll begin Emiyas Hashem going over Hallchas Tzedakah. We'll start with Tzedakah, and hopefully the next shiur will be Mer Masik Sufim. We'll see, maybe we're going to accomplish a little bit also in tonight's shiur. But first of all, I just want to go back to what we spoke last week regarding the shaila which we had. If you have an arch and turns, where should you put the mezuzah? Now the Terezuv says, you know, we mentioned about the machlokes of the Rambam and Rasha, and according to Rasha, you put it more higher. Even the round, the keshas is also part of the mezuzah. According to the Rambam, the keshas is part of the mashkov, and the mezuzah is only where it's straight. And I mentioned that we pasken that we go according to the Rambam, and you should put it on the straight one, shlishu elyon straight one. So somebody the Rambam mentioned that in your booklet it brings down the baraita from the Terezuv that the Terezuv paskens that you should go like Rashi. So as I mentioned last week, the Achroinam disagree with this baraita. And most there are some achronim which will pass according to the Terezuv, and you'll put it on the keshes. But most achronim, which is the Choyves Hadar, the famous Sefer Choyves Hadar, Anachs Mezuzah, the Chai Elivi, even before the Migdash Ma'at, and more and more achronim paskin in this case, like I said last week, not like the Terezuv. No, you consider. It's like the Rambam that you consider whatever it's straight, you consider as the mezuzah, and once it starts curving, it is considered the mashkov. Therefore, you put shlishu elyon of where it's straight. Now you're right. Your booklet is right. They brought down the Terezuv, the Terezuv, but Psak Halucha is according to the most poskim that you don't go this way. You pasking like the Rambam, and you put it shlishu elyon on the straight one. Now, just to make it clear, most of the time it's not negaya, and you can do it both. It should be correct according to both, because most of the time it is high enough that even according to it will come out say according to Rasha and say according to the Rambam. If it's most of the doors, which is you have a caches, you have a what is it called, an arch, is high enough, and therefore when you're going to think to shlish, you're going to see that you put it a little bit high. And again, according to the Rambam, you could put it till the tefach sumach to the ceiling. You don't have to put it tchila shlish elyon. So if you're going to put it higher up, at least one tefach below the keshes, you will come out according to Rasha, according to the Rambam. So most of the time, it's not negaya, but there are some places which it is negaya if it's a little bit lower arch door. In such a case, you're going to go according to the Rambam, and you're going to put shlishu elyon of wherever is the straight, because only that's considered mashkov, and the other is considered only that's considered mezuzah, and the other is considered mashkov. Okay, so just to make it clear that the final halacha l'maaseh, this is how you should pass. Because now we're going to get to Hallchas Tzedakah. Tzedakah is a big, a lot of simonim. It's Reish Memzah until I think Reish Nites, whatever. I assume you went through it at least we zoekt boy van de kroini, boy van makif. Let's go through again Shir Kluli on Hallchas Tzedakah. We do it together with the Achronim, with the poskim, which talk on this inyan. Okay, now the first thing is the Torah. This in Parshas Ra'ay, Peirik Tezvov, Sif a posik Zayin. The posik says like this, starts like this: Ki yibecho evyon ma'achat achechu. If you're going to have poor people, ma'achat achechu, ma'achat sherechu, asher Hashem Elokeinu noisel lechu, lo yisa amatzes levavchu, v'lo yisikvetzes yotchu ma'achichu evyon. You shouldn't how do you say it? Close your heart and your hands, not to give for your brother, which is a poor person. That's Pasik Zayin. Then in Pasik Ches, the Torah says, you should open your hands. You should give him. That's Pasik Ches. Again, it says you should give for the poor person. And as we all know, Rashi brings down, and we're going to see a little bit further. Means whatever he needs. You have to give him whatever he needs, whatever is missing from him. Then Pasik Tes, the Torah says again, you shouldn't do every Yishumar is a lesson. Yeah. So you should be not afraid, but wash out. Don't have bilayal, bad things, bad achshuvas in your heart. And you're going to say that since the Meshmit is around the corner, so you're going to be bad-eyed to your brother. You shouldn't do that. No, but then the next pasuk, no sentitele. Lo, you should give him. And the Rebbeinu Shalom says, Hashem will give you back, will pay you back, will bless you. Then it says the next pasuk, these are the psikim which talk about Tzedakah. And why did I specific bring down all this psikim? Is because we're going to get in a moment that there is 2 lavim and 2 loisas, 2 mitzvahs esai, positive mitzvahs, and 2 loisas, negative mitzvahs. It's all from this pasuk. But first, let's see like this. The Torah starts. Yedai simarash mem zayin. The Torah says, "Imoid tzorich adam lizor." A person has to be very lizor, to watch out. Yoiser mikol mitzvahs asai, more than all other mitzvahs asai. On mitzvahs tzedukah. Why? Ki efsher sheyuvel eda shvichas domim. You could get 2 shvichas domim. Shiyumas u'uni amavakesh imoleit lamiyat. Sometimes a poor person will ask you, give me some food, give me something to eat, and you're going to not give him right away, and he might die. And as the Gemara tells the story with one of the Tanom, which is a poor person, came, and he didn't get it right away, and he passed away. So that's why the Torah says, in Mo'od tzorich lizur, to give them. And the Bach writes that 4 places the Torah brings down the language Mo'od. One is Legaba Tzedukah, because it's very, very important to give right away. One is Legaba Isaribas, because it's very tempting. You have money and you give it out, so it's very tempting. One is Legaba Aroyes, as I mentioned, Legaba Yichad, that Legaba Aroyes, it says also Moed, because most of the people have a big taiva to that, so therefore it says Moed. And one is Legaba Shoichet, which is also very tempting. In the 4 places which the Torah writes Moed, because these are things which are very important to have your mind on, that Chaz v'Shalom you shouldn't be a nichshel. That's the Torah. Now the Mechaber writes, that mitzvahs asai, there's a mitzvahs asai. Let's get to that in a minute. But first of all, we should know the Mechaber brings a sif bais. Le'olam aynaudam ma'ani min tzedakah. It's very interesting. Sima Reish Mem Zayin, as I assume you saw, is the whole Sima basically on the big chshivas of the gewaltige mile of tzedukah. We don't find this in Shulchan Aruch. The Mechaber should write so much seifim, languages of giving tzedukah, because it's so important, such a big mitzvah. So the Mechaber writes, "Le'olam ein odam ma'ani min tzedukah." You're never going to see a person which is going to become poor by giving tzedukah. V'lo duvara, not a bad thing. Oy hezik misgalgal al yuda. By giving tzedukah, nothing bad can happen through this. Shenemar, as the pasuk says in Yeshaya, "V'oy masa tzedukah sholem." Tzedukah, masa tzedukah brings only sholem. And we know, we are Lubavitch Chassidim, we know the Alter Rebbe in Egeres HaKodesh, how much he writes. Most of them are basically regarding tzedukah, the mile of tzedukah, the chshivas of tzedukah. So we don't have to be elaborate that much on what's the mile of tzedukah, which see Alter Rebbe which every word is mediyek, kept on writing and writing all the gewaldige Sachen at tzedakah. So then the Machaba says, Sif Gimel, Kol HaMarachem al Aniyim, any person who has Rachmanas on the Aniyim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Marachem Olav. Hashem he has Rachmanas on him. Zug the Ramah, V'yitenu Odom al Liboy, a person should remember, Shi Mevakesh Kol Shul Parnasus HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You are asking constantly from Hashem Parnasa, in the same as Hashem listens to your bakosha and gives your parnasa, the same as you should listen to the asking of a ani and give him his parnasa, which is tzedakah. And also another reason you should give tzedakah, because kihi galgal achoizer ba'olam. We know that sometimes a person is a millionaire, and it could be a year later, it could be a poor person which has to come to people. And then today's day, a person which is poor, and next year it could be a millionaire. So, a person, even though he's wealthy, his children or grandchildren or great-grandchildren might be poor, and they might have to come to people for donations. Since you're going to have Rachmanas on someone else, the Klal Yisrael, the Rebbe will have Rachmanas on him, that people should give him too. Then the Machaba says, as we know, and pushes away if there is a gzaira on a person. If he gives tzedakah and he gives a lot of tzedakah, he pushes away the gzaira. And the Ramah is moisav ma'asheres, and it gives you, it should be ashiras. It's not only takes away peronias, poshet, it gives also makes healthy. We know that you cannot be manas Hashem. You cannot challenge Hashem Yisborach. I'm going to do this only if you give me that. It's awesome. It's the only thing which you could have you could challenge Hashem Yisborach and make, challenge him is batzedukah. As the pasuk says, try me out, challenge me. Now over here, it's not poshet that it goes on giving tzedakah. Some poskim rishonim say it goes only on the sinas maser. Maser means maser on food, like trime maser. Only then the Rebbeinu Shem says v'chaninu mazos in lav davka on tzedakah. But again, the Ramah says it clearly that that you could also test Hashem, challenge Hashem, test Hashem, also b'maser, which maser means also maser kisufim. Now again, a lot of boys do not agree with it, but again, we have a Ramah. Ramah is our Rebbe. He's the poisik for the Ashkenazim. So therefore, we have a psak from the Ramah that you could test Hashem and give tzedakah in order to get back. And so I think we are all kedai to challenge and test Hashem in this case and give tzedakah, and hopefully the Rebbe will give back to Kiflayim, to Shiur, Elef Mekuch. Also, the Mechenech says it's a mitzvah to give b'simcha, like the pasuk says, "V'lo yaira levavchu b'sitna lo." You shouldn't be, you have, bad feelings when you're giving it. Not only that, the Gemara says that if a person gives a lot of tzedakah, but he gives it with a frown or gives it with a bad attitude, he loses chas v'shalom the mitzvah. And if a person does not give because he doesn't have, and he's mafayis the oni, he says, I would love to give you, but I don't have now, but Hashem should give you. And if you mafayis him, even if you didn't give him, you have a big schar. So again, we should understand what is it in for mitzvah tzedakah. And that's why the Machaber, the whole simon, with 4 sifim, simon Rash Mem Zayin, of the gewaldige schar of tzedakah and the gewaldige mala of giving tzedakah. Now, there is a question which the Rishonim deal with. Why don't we make a bracha? Since it's a mitzvah, it's 2 mitzvahs esa, as we're going to come in a minute. It's 2 mitzvahs esa. Why don't we make a bracha? It's a mitzvah esa deraisa. So the Rashba has a tshuva chaylik alaf siman yitches, and he deals with that. And he says, that's B'chal Tshiva who writes, why don't we make a bracha on this? Why don't we make a bracha on that? Very interesting Tshiva. And the Rashba says 2 reasons why we don't make a bracha on the mitzvahs esef in giving tzedakah. One is, since it's a mitzvah which not necessarily you can fulfill it, because you can make a bracha lit tzedakah, you want to give for the oni, and the oni decides, I don't want to take, I don't want to be in the hand from Brias, or whatever it should be, I don't want to take from you. So therefore you can make a bracha, and the oni will not take. So therefore he's giving you a bracha levatola. So therefore we don't make a bracha on mitzvah tzedakah. So that's the reason, one of the reasons that the Rashba brings, and the other reason is because, after all, it's in order to give tzedakah, there is a negative for the person who gets it. He has to be or a man. Since there is a kilkel to some other person, you don't want to make a bracha. It is as if you're going to make a bracha. It's ke'ili, you are praising Hashem and blessing Hashem that He gave the opportunity to give tzedakah, that there's a poor person, and I can give tzedakah. So therefore, you're basically blessing Hashem that there are poor people. Therefore, the Rashba, you don't make a bracha. No, therefore, we don't make a bracha, even in such a case that we don't have this reasons. For instance, putting into a tzedakah pishka, a tzedakah box, which basically there's not a problem that uni might not want to take it because it's not for a specific uni, it's tzedakah klulius. And if this uni will not take it, someone else will take it. But again, we did not make, since we had this sometimes you cannot make the bracha, so therefore we don't make a bracha, even if you give it b'chashua, which the oni will not know and he will take it, we don't make a bracha. It's interesting to note just that in Perish from the Sefer, the Baal Rebida Chosid and Yerushalmi, in the beginning of Keitzet Mevarchem, he brings down Arabayni Eliyui that he used to make a bracha. So we see there are some Rishon which used to make a bracha on tzedakah, but again, most of the Rishonim, most Rebbe Kikiloi say we don't make a bracha on this, and the reason, as I mentioned before, like the Rashba says, or because the oni might not take, or because you don't want to bless Hashem, so to speak, that there are poor people. Okay, so now let's get, I mentioned all the psikim in the beginning of the shiur, and I read it because I wanted to show you that there are over here 4 mitzvahs. 2 mitzvahs asai, 2 mitzvahs lo yisese. The mitzvahs asai are, as I mentioned, Pesayach tiftach es yedechu. That's a mitzvah asai. You should open your hands and give tzedakah. So that's one mitzvah asai. Then in Pasuk Yid, the Pasuk says, no soin titan loy. That's the second positive mitzvah asai. So we have, whenever you do give a penny, a prita for tzedakah, you are makayim 2 mitzvahs asai. Then there is lavam, 2 lavam. One lav is, as I mentioned in the Pasuk, loy sa'amat es levavchu. You shouldn't close, harden your heart. And the second is, it says, v'loy sikpoitz es yodechu. You shouldn't close your hands. So since it's separate lavam, even 2 separate psukim, so we have mitzvahs asai, 2 mitzvahs asai, mitzvahs lo asai. There are cases which you are going to give tzedakah, you makayim the mitzvah, but if you won't give, not necessarily you're over of the lav. That means there are some scenarios which we're going to just mention in a minute, that if you give the tzedakah, you makayim a mitzvah, 2 mitzvahs asai. If you don't give the tzedakah, you're mavatal 2 mitzvahs asai, but not necessarily you are over of 2 loises. And there is 5 scenarios which, according to some poskim, you're not over of the lav. And it's very important to know, because you have to remember, if a guy comes to you and you don't give a lefuchas minimum, as I mentioned, a shava perita, so therefore you could be over on 2 loises and 2 mitzvahs asai. So at least we got to know, if you don't give, even if you're over what is the scenario that you're not over the loises, even you're not makayim the mitzvahs asai. So the first thing is, if the oni does not ask you. So again, most of them are yesh omrim. That means some poskim say this, some poskim say the other ones. So therefore, I'm going to give you all that, but not everybody's masking to everything. So there are poskim which say whenever the oni does not ask you, therefore you're not over the mitzvah society. For instance, that if there's an oni who goes to a chasana and he asks a person for tzedakah, and someone else sees how he asks tzedakah, and he picks himself up and walks away. In such a case, since the oni did not ask him for tzedakah, so he didn't have a request, and which was denied, is according to some poskim, you're not over of the two loisasses. The second scenario is you're not over is according to Yash Omram, if the poor person is not a rov or oram. That means he's not very, very, very poor. That means he's a poor person, and he has a halacha and then only that he could take tzedakah, but is not in a way a massive rov, hungry, and not dressed properly. In such a case, since he's not evyoin, vade evyoin, some poskim will say you're not over of the loisasa. Then there's another third one. What?
Sorry. What would the din be if somebody goes? Let's say an ani needs, I don't know, $10,000, and theoretically the guy has.
We just started, Shira. I'm seeing where you're heading to. We are going to get all your questions addressed, hopefully, Me'etz Hashem. If not, in Me'etz Hashem, we're going to have some questions. So make a note. What's your question? And we're going to answer it in the end. It's not kedai to go ask a question because we just began, and we're going to get probably covered most, if not all of your questions will be covered.
All right.
Third scenario is if you gave already. Again, all this are yesh omrim. It's not miskim like according to all the points. But again, some points will say if you already gave masa as much as you had to give the chiv what you give, and you don't have more than you. That means you don't have to give more than you meiser. Then you're not over of the lav. The fourth scenario is a oni, a poor person, which although an oni is mechiv to give tzedakah, hakel mechiyuvam litten tzedakah, even a poor person. But if an oni did not give, he's not over according to the naim lemishpadim of Basra. He is not over of this iser of the two lavim. And the final scenario is, which is a imre bina or a chaim semi yid gimel. Again, a lot of poskim disagree with this, but again, I'm bringing it down. We should know it. We can get to a little bit further and see that a lot of poskim do not agree, especially with this. But again, there's an imre bina which says that if it is a oni which is machzer al psochem, which is going around from door to door, is in such a case there is not a problem of not giving. That means you're not makayim the mitzvah. So all of these things which I mentioned is only to take away the loisasa. The mitzvah asai is still your mavat le mitzvah asai. That means as if you didn't do that mitzvah, which is a big thing. It's as if you didn't eat matzah and Pesach Banach, or you didn't take a lulav and estrik the first days of Sukkot. So a mitzvah asai is very big. But at least we took away the loisasa, the two loisasas, that if he is going around knocking on doors asking, you're not over of an iser, the lavim, because if you didn't give him, someone else will give him. So therefore, it's only a person which basically you have to give, and he doesn't go around and you know that he needs, or he came ask you privately and you don't give, then you're over according to the imre bina. And another thing is, if you are masaraf to a gaba tzedukah, that means only if the oni comes to you and you don't give him, you're over of the lavim. If the gaba tzedukah gives to him, according to the tzedukah mishpat and some poiskim, you're not over of the lavim because it's not the oni itself. Good. Now, when a poor person comes and asks you for tzedukah, a person goes around, knocks on the door, or comes over to you in shul, and asks you for tzedukah. You have to give him something. Something you have to give him, again, in order not to be over of the lavim. Also, not to give him at all, because there's a passing in Tilam, Ein Dalet, Kapitel Ein Dalet, Pasuk Chof Aleph, Al Yoshuv Dach Michlam. You shouldn't retrieve, you shouldn't throw away, push away a dach, a poor person, and he should get ashamed. So therefore, from over here, we say that also that you should push him away, and you have to give him something. We're going to see soon what, how much, but again, you have to give him something. And if you don't give him, according to Roif Poiskim, you are going to be over of a lav. Now again, I mentioned in Rabbina, if he's going from door to door, you're not over, but again, to Roif Poiskim, which do not agree with him Rabbina, you are over of a lav if you don't give him something. And even if he doesn't come and ask you, and you know there are poor people which needs, according to some Poiskim, as I mentioned before, all of the reasons which I mentioned before is only Yesh Omram. So I'm generalizing now that even if he goes around, Rosh Poiskim will say you have to give, if not you're over balav. And even if he doesn't ask, according to some Poiskim, you're over balav, except again of the Esa. And you have to give him something. How much you have to give him? According to the Remu, Yerdai Simarash Memtes, Sif Dalet, the Remu says you have to give him a groigrus, something which is a groigrus, or according to the Aruch HaShulchan, which says you have to give him a kazayis, which is bigger than a groigrus. And then you're makayim the mitzvah. If you give less than that, you're not makayim the mitzvah. It's interesting, just want to bring it, even though that according to Pashas Remu and Aruch HaShulchan doesn't say, it disagrees, but again, the Derech HaMinah, Rabbi Chaim Kanevsky, which he wrote the Sefer on the Rambam and Hilchas Matnas Aniyim, so he brings down in Parik Zayin Sifkut Mem Tez that even if you don't give a Shova Prita, then you're not over. Since as long as you did not push him away and you didn't give him nothing, you're not over. But again, according to the Poiskim, according to the Rishonim, the Meiri says clearly that there has to be a minimum Shova Prita. So therefore, if a person comes to you in shul, comes to you wherever it is, the minimum you should have to give is you have to give a Shova Prita. Give him a dime, a nickel. I don't know how much a Shova Prita today's day is, but I put him, give him a dime, something that you should give him if the oni itself comes to you. If not, you might have a big problem, according to most Poiskim, you're over of Shnai Lava. Again, as I mentioned before, it's only if the Oni himself comes. If somebody comes, a Gabazduka comes, you're not over of the lava. Or even if the Oni sends someone, go ask on my behalf. According to most Poiskim, you're not over of the Iser. But according to some Poiskim, which is going to say that it's still since Shlich Shnum Kemoise is as if the Oni asks direct. But again, the Derech HaMinah paskins that no, if it's not the Oni himself, and I would say more than Derech HaMinah, a lot of other Poiskim say if it's not the Oni himself, you don't have a choif to give. That means you have a mitzvah to give, but you're not mavatal the two lavim which we have over here, which we must mention. If a person is mischayev to give tzedakah, b'neder, he gives a mishabayirech, all these things, and he didn't give, then he has another mitzvah is mavatla, other essa. Vasisu kashenedartu b'fichu. You should do how you promised with your mouth. And Chazal darshan nedartu b'fichu zi tzedakah. So therefore, if you are giving, you're pledging to give tzedakah, and you're not giving it, you're over the essa of another essa of a sisika shedartu b'fichu. When are you over? Now, if there's a or oni mitziam, then right away you have to give it. There's no clue that three yom tovim. But if it's not oni, which you don't have an oni, which will take right away, it goes according to the halacha of a korban. We know if a person says, I want to be makriv, a sacrifice, a korban, he has 3 sholosh golem, he has 3 me'adam that he could wait, and after 3 me'adam is over of aloisas aloisa achel l'shalmoi. You shouldn't delay paying off your neder, what you promised. So if you don't have a niyam right away, a person lives in a town which there isn't a niyam, or he is in a place which he doesn't have a niyam right away, so he has 3 yom tovim to pay off what he pledged. But if he has a niyam all over, according to a lot of poskim, you're over miyad. That means whenever you find an osher, you have to, per person, you have to give it. I just want to mention, if a person pledges in a shul by the Sefer Torah, not to a poor person, to a shul, according to a lot of poskim, if it goes through 3 yom tovim, you're over beloisas. So you have to be sure and remember that if you pledged something for a shul, you should pay it at least within the 3 yom tovim. Even the best thing is to pay it right away, but at least within 3 yom tovim. If not, you chas v'sholem over of a lav l'sa'achel l'shalmoi.
Rabbi.
What?
Question.
Yeah.
I've heard that if somebody's bidding for something in a shul, Simchas Torah, Hagbeh, these stuff, and then you lose the bid, that money that you had in mind to give to the shul, it's stuck in money?
We paskan, it's not tzedukah money. There is in Shulchan Aruch, the Mungavrum brings down, there used to be a minig in Ashkenaz, I don't recall which town, I think maybe even the Marshal brings it down, that there used to be a minig that whatever you pledged, you have to pay. You said $10, the other guy said 15, and he got it, you have to still pay the $10. But we don't pass like that, because by us, it's the das that I'm pledging only if I get it. If I don't get it, I'm not paying for it. So therefore, that's the binig that we don't pay. If a person wants to pay whatever he pledged, tuvu levrucha, but no, he's not mechiyav to pay it. But it's kedai taka, right? Since you brought it up, it's kedai to have in mind that basically 2 things you should have in mind. One, you have to have in mind that basically that you're not going to give what you pledged, what you bid, if you don't get it. It's kedai to have it in mind once and for all. Second of all, it's kedai to have in mind that as long as I don't say it with my mouth, and I just, sometimes a person makes an appeal, and first thing pops up in your mind, I'll give him $18, and then finally I'll give him only $10. So you should have in mind that as long as I don't give it into his hands, or I don't say it out, I'm going to give you X amount of money, it's not considered giving. Therefore, you don't have to, because if you don't have, because a person makes up in his mind to give a korban, you have to give it. So if you have in mind to give, I want to give $1,000 for the shul, it might be a problem of the siskashin dartu. But therefore, it's kedai to have in mind once and for all, as still it doesn't get to the hand of the tzedukah, then it's, or at least I didn't say it out of my mouth, it's not considered a pledge, and then you not have problems of giving what came up your mind the first second. Minadin, you don't have to be mafresh maser by your paycheck. Minadin, you could when you have a poor person, you take out money, you give it, and then you make once a year or whatever, once in 6 months, we're going to see you make the cheshboinus. But lamasa, we do it only not because it's a mitzvah. We only do it. Now giving the masa, that's something else. We're going to get to that in the next year. That's something else. I'm not talking about giving, but being mafresh. Some people have an envelope, and end of the paycheck, when they get the paycheck, they made $300. They take out $30. That's not a choiv. It's a choiv that you should write down. You owe. You have to give $30 for tzedukah, but taking it down, that's not a choiv. It is only a practical matter that whenever an oni comes to you, you have it ready. Or it's also much easier to give tzedukah once it's in mifresh. So therefore, it's kedai to do that. But it's not a chiyuv. The halacha is a gabbai tzedakah cannot take from women and children only a dover meat, only a small amount. He cannot give a big amount. A lady cannot give.
I didn't understand.
And women cannot give a big amount, and the gabbai tzedakah should not take from women a big amount for tzedakah, because she has no money to give. Even if she works, and he's not working, after all, according to halacha, whatever masi day isha is lebala. So whatever money which comes in is the husband's. Now, if the husband does not agree that she should give big amounts of money, and she gives, she's over of iser genaiva. If the gabbai tzedakah takes a big amount from a lady which cannot afford it, and she has a heart like gold, and she keeps on spending the money, he should know that he has the money is gnayvik zayle, and he has a chaylik of stealing the husband's money. Only a little bit, which it makes sense a woman should give, then you could take from women. How much is a little bit? So the poskim are right, it is according to the wealth of the husband. A person which is a millionaire, she should give $200, might be still duvamir. But a person which is a kohen man, and she gives $200, that's duvamir. That's a matune mariba. So she has, if she gives $10, okay. But again, it is according to the wealth of the husband. So therefore, a person should know, sometimes the husband does not want the wife should give that much. If she gives, it is a big problem to take a big amount. You have to evaluate if she gives what she could give, so it shouldn't be a problem. Now, if the husband is moiche, even if a kolshi, the husband says, I don't want you to give even $1, then she cannot give him. Because after all, again, it's his money, it's his choiv, and she has no right to give someone else's money. Even if she knows that her husband is basically a kamtzen, he's stingy, and she knows that he has millions of dollars in the bank or under the mattress, it's still also for her to give, and it's still for the person who takes, it's gezel. Now, if she says, I have a right to give, my husband lets me to give this amount, she has an amount, so you can take. But if she doesn't say, and she gives you a big amount, then you have to question such a thing. And again, I don't think you have that much this shala, but again, you have to know the halacha. Now, sometimes, and that's very important halacha, sometimes a person goes to tzedakah, and the gabbai tzedakah, or the person, precious, give me more. And the wife the lady tells him, this is how much I could give. That means she cannot give more and bog off. That means because more than that, let's say the husband says you can give her per person comes to the door $18 at the max. So if a lady tells this is what I could give, that means she doesn't have right more, and you cannot pressure her, because then it is gezel to take. But again, if she says yes, my husband gives me permission to give, kemiven she has an amount. And again, that's even if a lady, which she brings in, she's the bread maker, and she brings in the money, and it's still the husband's money. The halacha is a oisig b'mitzvah potem en a mitzvah, and therefore a oisig b'mitzvah is potem mitzvah tzedakah. As the Gemara says, a shomer avayda, a person is a shomer avayda, is considered a shomer socher. Why? Because what's the schar does he get? He doesn't get anything paid. So the Gemara says, in Masechtas Bava Metzia, because since by the time he's a shomer, he's part of a giving tzedakah, because he's oisig b'mitzvah. So therefore, because the shomer avayda is a chaylik of the mitzvah of shomer avayda, of shuvas avayda, so therefore it's part of a mitzvah. So we see that a person which is oisig b'mitzvah is part of a mitzvah. Therefore, zug the Mishnah Berurah and Simon Tzadik Beis in Arachaim Sifkut Lamed Vov, a person which is davening, he is a oisig b'mitzvah, and he's part of a giving tzedakah, because he's oisig b'mitzvah. Now, what is considered davening in this case? But pashtus from the Mishnah Berurah is mashma, means the whole davening. Once he starts davening from Hoidi, or maybe from Baruch Omar, is oisig b'mitzvah, because you cannot say he means tefillah b'Shemoneh Esrei, because of course, once he's b'Shemoneh Esrei, he cannot give. He's also to give. So what pashtas, according to the Mishnah Berurah, is in the middle of davening, even when it's Psikah de Zumra, he's potem in a mitzvah. Now there are poskim, the Vavorich David, in his shivas, in his tzedakah writes that no, it's only Shemoneh Esrei, Psikah de Zumra is mechiv to give tzedakah, but again, according to the Mishnah Berurah, even by Psikah de Zumra is pashtas or mashma. Now, the pshat is that you should avoid giving tzedakah then. It is, if you didn't give, at least you're not over of kanasirim, because of Kosav, it's the oisik b'mitzvah potem in a mitzvah. What is the shear of giving tzedakah? What is the shear of chiyuv? What's the chiyuv of giving tzedakah? Yeah? Now the Mechaber Simon Reish Mem Tes, Sif Aleph writes like this. Shir nesinusoi, what is the shear of nesinus tzedakah? Im yodoi maseges, if he is wealthy and he could give, yitan kivitzoyrech maniyim. He should give as much as the onion needs. Im ein yodoi maseges, if he doesn't have enough money to give as much as the onion needs, yitan at choymesh nechosim. He should give a fifth of his nechosim, mitzvah min hamufcher. That means that's a mitzvah, the highest standard. Giving maser, a tenth, it's midas baininess. It's not mifchim and a mifchim, it's baininess. And if you have a bad eye, that is giving pochos, then you give a maser. That is what the Mechaber says, that again, you should give maser if mitzvah and a mifchim, and it is baininess choymash is mitzvah and a mifchim. Maser, a fifth is mitzvah and a mifcher. Maser, a tenth is midas binanis. But that's if I Yudim Maseges. If Yudim Maseges, we see over here, what Pasha said, we're going to get to it a little bit later. We see that you could give more. Yeah? Okay. What is the cheshbon of a fifth? Now, the Gemara says in Ksubas, Dafnin Omad Aleph, Kuni, there's in a town which is called Afsha, they made takonas, and one of the takonas they made, alivazvas, if somebody is giving tzedakah, mavazvas is money, gives a lot of tzedakah, alivazias, yoiser mechomish, you shouldn't give more than a fifth. Why? He shouldn't, if he's going to give all his money, there are people who give away whatever they have, and then they will get poor, and they will have to need to come to people. So therefore, they made a takana. You give only a fifth of your what you have. Now there are some exclusions that you can give more. So over here, Pashas Zatkon, you cannot give more. What is the exclusion when you could give more? Is the first of all is the Ramo says that's only b'meshech imay chayav. When a person is alive, since we want he should be able to have more money to live, so therefore he cannot give more than fifth. But if a person before on his deathbed, he says, I would like to give $1 million, which is basically 3/4 of his nachosam, I want to give for tzedakah, there's not an issue to give more than a fifth, because he won't be mitzdarach lebrias. Zug the Ramu, in such a case, you could give more than a fifth. But other than that, don't give more than a fifth. That's one exclusion, how you could give more than a fifth. The second one is, we all know, the Alter Rebbe brings it down in Gersa Kodesh Simon Yid, in Tanya, and the Rubike Kila Pois can bring it down, La Locha, this Alter Rebbe, that if you give, in order, you need Kaporas Nafshoy, a person sinned, in order to have Kapora, is Tzedakah, is a Mirik HaNefesh, so therefore you could give more than a Chomesh. Why? Because that you don't give because, so to speak, of the mitzvah of tzedakah. You give it in order to clean your nefesh. The same as if chas v'sholom, it shouldn't happen to any yid gets sick. He's going to pay as much as money he has in order to get healthy. So since refuas haguf, to help to save your body, to heal your body, you're going to pay all the money. A person has a right for healing his neshama to give tzedakah. So therefore, if a person has a sin, which more or less all of us, we have this issue. So therefore, it's not a problem to give more than a chomesh because we give it for refias hanefesh. And the poskim bring it down Allah. The Shitta Makebetzes in Ksubas Memtesem with Aleph brings another thing which you can give more than chomesh is if it's letzorech Talmud Torah. Letzorech oni not, for a poor person not, but letzorech Talmud Torah, you could give more than a chomesh. Then the Chassam Sofer in Yeridaya Simon Reish Chuftes brings in his shuvas that if a person wants to give tzedakah for his parents, AVM, as we're going to see, this is one of the first things of a person to give tzedakah if his parents are in need. Zug dich Sam Sofer, a person which is toimach, supports his parents, he has a right to give yoisem lechoimesh of his nechosam. Now, this is exclusions in certain areas. But if a person has a lot of money, wealthy, is also, I could give more than a chomesh, as I just read to you, the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch writes, as I mentioned before, Vim ein Yudem Aseges, if he doesn't, it's not Yudem Aseges, that means he doesn't have that much, then Mitzvah Namifche should give a fifth, a chomesh, and with the Bainis, he should give a 10. So what does he start? If you're the Masegis, you could give for the poor person as much as he needs. So according to the Machaber, the B'Yosef and the Machaber, the Shulchan Aruch, he passes if a person has a lot of money and we're not afraid that basically he's going to become poor, he could give Yosef and Achoimesh because he's Yodem Masegis. Now, Pashas from the Remu, let me make it clear, the Remu is Mavir nicht like the Machaber. The Remu Pashas is disagreeing with the Machaber, the Shulchan Aruch, because the Remu brings down the halacha as you shouldn't give more than a chomesh. So we see the Remu holds it generally that you shouldn't give more than a chomesh. You shouldn't get to get starach lebris. You shouldn't get poor and have to come to other people. But again, even the Remu, which says it's also to give more than a chomesh, we have this exclusion as we mentioned before that the tzorech fis hanefesh, tzorech Talmud Torah, tzorech kibbut AVM, then it is an exclusion. There is another thing which the Chofetz Chaim writes in Havas Chesed. As you know, the Chofetz Chaim made a sefer on Chesed, which is Hilchas Tzedakah and other things, and it's called the Havas Chesed. And over there in Heilig Bais Perik Chof as Gimel, the Chofetz Chaim passes that if a person is on a salary, a person which is an employee, and he has a final salary, you know, he's secured, he has a contract, a secured salary. If he wants to give more than a chomesh, he could give, because after all, we are not afraid that he's become poor because he's on a salary, on a fixed salary, which if he gives whatever he needs, he wants to give this week, next week he gets a new paycheck, and therefore it's not a problem to give more than a chomesh. Now, there is the Rambam in Perish HaMashnayos, and it's brought down by the Chofetz Chaim and Havas Chesed, says a very interesting thing. He said, we just mentioned that giving a chomesh is only mitzvah min hamifchad. You don't have to give a chomesh, a fifth. You could give, with the binanis, is giving maaser. The Chofetz Chaim says that's only giving in general tzedakah. But if you have a poor person, which is right in front of you, which is hungry, or he's not dressed properly, that means he's an oni, which is rov or yoram, or you know of a person like that, even though he's not in front of you, but you know there's a person which basically is struggling, he doesn't have to put foot on his table. In such a case, giving a chomesh is not a mitzvah min hamifchad, it is a chiyuv, it's a choiv to give. It's not only mitzvah chasidus. This is what the Chofetz Chaim and Havas Chesed brings down from Rambam Perish HaMashnayos. But Lamaasa, Pashtus Lushna Shulchan Aruch Mashma, no. That Mikir Adin, if it's Ein Yudem Aseges, there's not a chiyuv to give a chomesh, it's only mitzvah min hamifchad, and not, it's a choiv to give. Again, the Machaber writes over there also, I want to bring it over again, you have to give it b'seiva ponim yofis. you give tzedakah, you have to have, it has to be b'sevi purim yofos. You have to feel with this pain. You have to noise ba'olim chavayroi, to feel the same, and you should talk him divrei tanchimim. And if you're giving it, even if you give a lot of money, but you give it with a sour face, zuk the mechaber, if sit zechusoi, unbelievable. You can give a lot of tzedakah, and if you give it with a frown, or you give it sometimes with a bad attitude, basically you could lose the mitzvah. The mechaber writes, and if you don't have what to give, at least you should tell you shouldn't scream at him, and you should say, I don't have, or bachlal, you shouldn't scream at Oni. You should defise him with dvorim and say, I would love to give you. If I had, I would have give you. In Mitzvah, if I'll have, and you'll still need, I'll give you. Basically, that's also tzedakah. Sometimes this is even bigger than tzedakah, and then if you give him some money because he needs it. All the people who go through door to door, you should know. Even if he's Yerushalayim, which is used to it, for every child, it's very, very uncomfortable. I spoke already with some people who tells me, you think it's easy for me? It's degrading. So if he has the courage, the omet to go around, it's only because he's in need. And therefore, don't make fun of him, chas v'sholem. Feel with him, give him, and if you can give, at least give him a good word, or offer him a glass of water when he comes to your house, if it's summer, or a bathroom, because sometimes they could go around, nobody offers them to come in to go for a bathroom, etc. Okay. Now, how much do you need to give for a specific person? We only said generally now how much tzedakah a person has to give. So we mentioned if you have a wealthy, you could give more than a chomesh, according to mechaber, according to Remo, only a chomesh, according or maaser. That's generally how much tzedakah a person has to give, flawlessly. But how much do you have to give for this specific oni? A person comes to you, how much do you need to give? Now the Rambam writes in Hilchos Matnas Aniyim, Perek Zayin Halacha Gimel, quote, Lefi ma shechoser ha'oni, whatever the oni is missing, atu metziva litlo, you are machiv to give. If he doesn't have clothing, you have to go out and buy him clothing. If he doesn't have utensils, or he doesn't have, in his house things for eating, you have to buy him. If he doesn't have a wife, you have to try to find a shidduch, and you have to pay for his chassan. Find a shidduch. If this is a person which he's used to having a sis to drive on it, and an avid roam in front of him, you have to give it to him. That means in our language, if a person who used to have a car and his car broke down and he's a poor person, you have to help him buy a car. So if he's used to it. Why? How do we know such a thing? Because the Torah says, Dai machsoira sheyechser. And Rashi brings it down in Pasik. Dai machsoira sheyechser, whatever it's missing. So basically, you have to be mashlim, whatever is missing. So right away, the Gemara says, you have to be mashlim what's missing, but you don't have to make him wealthy. You don't have to make him wealthy, but whatever he needs, you have to give. And this is what the Mechaber Paskins in Redai Simarai Shni in Hilchos Tzedakah, beginning, Kama noisnim leuni. How much do we give for Oni? Again, he brings, you have to give him only, the Shechino wants to say, you don't have to give him to make him wealthy. Rak dai machsoer sheyechser. You have to give him as much as I need. Kaitzat, again, he brings almost not the same as the Rambam, but similar. Imiruov, if he's hungry, you have to give him food. If he needs a suit, he needs some clothing at least, you have to give him clothing. If ain't no klei bayis, you have to buy him klei bayis. If he's using to going on a sus. Again, so basically the Mechaber elaborates a little bit more. He says if he used to eat if he used to eat bread, you cannot give him vegetables to eat. You have to give him bread. If he used to eat, you have to make sure. If he used to eat warm bread, you have to give warm bread. Cold. Again, what does it mean? You have to give him whatever it's missing, whatever he was used to, and he needs it. You have to fill him in. So basically, you're all going to jump off your chair, and you're going to say, "Wait a minute." That means if a poor person knocks on my door and it says I'm marrying on my seventh child, I have $100,000 in loans, and now I need another $30,000 to marry off my seventh child. So you have to give him $30,000 if you have it in savings. That's the question which everybody's going to ask. Comes the Remu, and the Remu says, "Venere the cholze begabay tzedukah." That's a din in gabay tzedukah. That means the gabay tzedukah knows that in town there's a person which is needy. The gabay tzedukah has to give him whatever he needs. He has to give him whatever he needs. If it's a lot of people, again, there has to be a gabay tzedukah. We should make the cheshbonos and see what, where, and when, and that's why in every city there was a tamcha which used to give food. There's a kippah tzedukah which used to give money. That's a choiv. And the Rambam says tamcha is lav dafka, but a kippah tzedukah is a choiv. The gabay tzedukah, he has to give for only whatever he is used to. But a yochid, a person, private person, is not machiv to give for oni dai machsoir. He doesn't have to give. He only has to feel with him, and the oni has to go around and say for the public, I am in need, I have a problem, I'm in need, and the rabbin has to make sure that have to give dai machsoir. And the oni should give as much as he could, which is in his budget according to halacha, whatever, anything. He doesn't have more. So basically, the Remu right away says this halacha that you have to fill whatever is needed is only halacha on a tzibur, on a gabay tzedukah. It is not halacha which every person has to give for everyone, for in the community, every poor person. That's the first thing we should have to know. Another thing we have to know, the Rambam writes a very important halacha. The Rambam writes over there, halacha zayin, only hamachzer al psochim, a person which goes around knocking on doors, the same will go, he goes around in shuls, goes around in houses, goes around asking for tzedakah. Ein is cooking lo lematonim riba. So whatever I said before, you have to die machzer Hashem yechsa, zug the Rambam, that is, if it's only an oni, which is basically not knocking on doors. And over there, it is according to the Remu only on the gabay tzedukah, and according to other poskim, which pashtus a machaber, which is even a person. But again, according to the Remu, it's only gabay tzedukah. But that's only a person which is not knocking on doors. But the person who's knocking on the door, you could give only nesenas matonomi etas. You could give only a little bit. Why? And Rashi says it's a Gemara Bava Basra. Basically, it's a Gemara Bava Basra daftes u'madalav. And Rashi in the Bramaschel ein is cooking loy, which is a Gemara. The Gemara says ein is cooking loy. Why? Since he's a person which is not ashamed, or at least he got used to. I wouldn't say he's not 100% ashamed, but at least he got used to knocking on people's doors. So then I'm not machiv anymore, because I'll give you what I could or what I want, as long as again shuva prita. A minimum shuva prita, I'll give you what I can, and go knock on other doors. Since you're not ashamed to go around knocking on doors, so therefore, ein is cooking a matuna meriba, and you could give as much as you want for that specific oni, because he's used to knocking on the doors, and he should go around and ask for other people ochet. So anyone who comes over to you, not privately, no, he goes around in shuls, goes around in the street, goes around in the chasanas, or goes around knocking on doors, he is considered the gather of machzer al psochim. So you have no choiv of dai machzer al yechser, and that's enough matonomi etes. Again, has to be lefuchas prita, according to the Remo Groigras. Again, this you don't have to give that much. So this will answer the question which I had more than once. By some groceries, right out of the door are sitting poor people, and they ask any other people who comes out from the grocery that you should give me. Are you mechiv to give for every person which sits over there? That's a question which I had more than once, and the answer for this is, or the same thing will be also in Yeshua. The answer is yes. You have to give for everyone a shuva prita, a dime, and that's enough. If it's the oni itself, If the oni himself asks you, then you should give at least a Shuvah Brita. And if not, you chas v'shalom over of lois esses. But if she doesn't ask you direct, or she's not the oni itself, there's a person who's like Abba Tzedukah sits over there, then you're not over on Kshim Siram, and you don't have to give. But again, in order to be Mekayim the mitzvahs essa, then it is clear to give a Shuvah Brita. But you don't have to give more than that, because she is considered, or he or she are considered Machzor al Psochim, and as the Rama Paskins, you can give Matona Me'etas, you don't have to give Matona Meriba. So again, we know exactly already two things. First of all, we know how much tzedukah a person has to give overall. That's the first thing, how much. So we say, if you're wealthy, you can give more than a chomesh. If a regular person should give, Ein Toiv should give a fifth, Beinani should give Maser, and Ayru at least you can give less. And we know already how much you have to give for a poor person individual. If it is a person which is Machzor al Psochim, you give the minimum for that specific person. If it is not a Machzor al Psochim, if it is a person, for instance, which does not go around and is ashamed to ask, and he came over to you, you should know, nobody knows, but I have a serious issue, I can't make ends meet. Over there, we have to give already. Over here, according to the Machaber, you have to give him a lot. And according to the Remu, is it's only a din gaba tzedukah. It's not a din in a yochid. Kimivin, you have to give him, but you don't have to give a lot. According to Machaber, you have to give as much as possible. And according to the Remu, you don't have to give, because that's a din gaba tzedukah. But that's already different. But if he's a person which goes around, then how much we have to give for the oni. Now, let's go to the next step. Kedimas b'tzedukah. Kedimas b'tzedukah means, for whom do I give first? What kind of tzedukahs do I give first? And what kind of people do I give first? That means like this.
Can I ask a quick question?
What?
Just quick question.
Yeah.
So Min Hadin is saying the person it's not mechoyev to give. A person's not obligated in Meiser. Is that correct? It's something that's more...
I didn't talk yet. Now we are obligating Meiser. We're going to get to that. That's a separate thing of Meiser. Now we're talking mitzvah tzedukah. Meiser is a separate thing. But that's now we're talking about mitzvah tzedukah. You are talking a question. Do I have to take off Meiser of my money? That's a separate shiur which we're going to speak the coming week on Masek Sufim, the whole halacha, what, where, and when, if you bechal machiv, with the rice, with the rabbonon, minik. But now we are talking about mitzvah tzedukah. A person has a mitzvah's asset to give tzedukah. That's a separate, that's not on a paycheck. It's a mitzvah, they have to give tzedukah. Now, the question is, how much tzedukah you have to give? Pashas, as we learned now, if you don't have poor people, then again, you don't have to. If you live in a town which is, there's no poor people over there, so basically you don't have to give anything. We're going to talk about Halakas Masik Suf or something else, but the Halakas Tzedukah, if there is no poor people, okay, you don't have to give Tzedukah. There's no poor people.
So when we say 10% as a Beinani, that means that's talking about 10% of what you have. Not what you're earning, but what you have.
Now, there's an Indian of giving Maser Tzedukah means any money which comes in, you earn money. And again, we're going to get to the pratim on it later. But any money which you make, you take 10%, take it off. That's Maser Kesufim. I'm not talking about Maser Kesufim. I'm talking now the mitzvah tzedukah. A person, how much is a person mechiv to give for tzedukah? That means if there are aniyim, how much do I need to give? If there aren't aniyim, there's no tzedukah. I don't need to give. We're finished.
So when we say 10% or ayin taiva is 20%, that's only asking you.
That's an Halakas Tzedukah. That means a person which has a poor person coming to him, or he knows a poor person which is in need, how much should I give?
You're supposed to give up to 10%.
Up to 10% or up to 20%. I'm toiv up to 20%. I'm abandoned up to 10%. Yeah. But if you don't have...
According to the Mechaber, every time somebody comes to you in private, whatever, it says that they need it, you have to give them 10% of what you have in your possession.
Even more. According to the Mechaber, only the Remu writes it's not a din in a person. It's only a din in Gabbat Tzedukah. According to the Mechaber, if you have a lot of money, and a poor person comes to you and he asks you, Rabbi Isai, I'm broke, I have no money, you have to give him as much as he needs. He was a wealthy guy and lost his car. You have to make sure that he has a car.
But until 20%, right? Because that's
no, that's only no. According to the Mechaber, Pashta Mechaber is only im ayu the masegis. If you don't have, it's still 20%. If a person is wealthy, he has to give much more than 20%. I mentioned to begin with that the Mechaber writes only the Remu says that you shouldn't give more than a chomish. So that's Pashas Mechaber Remu. So according to the Remu, you never give more than a fifth. That means 20%. According to Mechaber, if you are a wealthy guy, you're a wealthy guy, Donald Trump, a Yiddish Donald Trump, then you have to give, and you have a person which is not Machzor al-Psuchim, you have to give as much as you can in order to fill up what he's losing. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Now the meaning of taking,
like the Mechaber. I mean, like the Ramah. B'chlal, we always say that we
pass the Mechaber, the Ramah, that what? We never have to give more than a chomish. Except if you want to give, you could give fisa nefesh, all the other exclusions which you could give more. But you don't have to give more than a chomish because fakert, alivazis, it's also to give more than a chomish. Chutz the exclusions which I mentioned. It's awesome. But I'm just saying, so let's go according to Remu. According to the Remu, a person comes to you and he's not Machzor al-Psuchim, and he goes into criteria that you have to give him, then you have to give him till a chomish.
It's not only you said, when is it only the fund, the community fund that it has to give?
Oh, over here comes in the halacha which I mentioned before, that the poskim say that's a din. The Remu says it's a din in Gabbat Tzedukah. It's a din in Gabbat Tzedukah. To give him whatever, he's missing a car, he's missing utensils in his house, he's missing pots and pans, and we have to fill him. If he was a guy who had a lot of money, he got bankrupt and they took away everything from him, and we have to fill him up whatever he lost. That's a din in Gabbat Tzedukah. It's not a din in a private person. It's a din in the Gabbat Tzedukah. But to give Maser, Chomish, all these things, this could go also on Ani, on a private person. But has to go in specific criteria. If he's a Machzor al-Psuchim, you don't have to give him even a Chomish or a Maser. But if it's a person basically which is ashamed to ask, and you got to know that he is indeed, or he came over to you specific and told you it's not a public then in such a case, it goes into other klol halacha. You understand what I'm saying? Again, make sure you understand. Let me just go over, just summarize it. To give more, there's a halacha that a person should not give them more than a chomish according to the Remu. Good. So when a person comes to you, a person, and he asks you for tzedakah, you cannot give more than a chomish. Good. How much do you have to give? How much do you have to give? So the pasuk says, you have to give him everything, whatever he is missing. Zukt of them the Remu? No, it's a din only in Gabbat Tzedukah. It's not a din in a private person. A private person does not have to give daim achser achshechser. My daim achser achshechser could cost $100,000, or marrying off a person's child could cost $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. Zug the Remu, this is a din in tzedakah. It's not a din on a private person. He does not have to fill up the person which he had. Filling up is lost. That's like a din in tzedakah. Private person does not need to give. How much does a private person has to give? If he's a machzor apsochim, then matura me'etas. Give him matura me'etas. If it is not a person which is machzor apsochim, and he doesn't go into other symbols which you're going to see that you don't have to give. It's not in the category that you could give him mator me'etas. You have to give him matonas mariba. What is matonas mariba? You could give till beinani is a maser and ayuf is a choimish.
That's a chiv. You have to give that up to that amount.
In such a case, yeah. If you could give and you have oni which is in such a matzias and he's not machzor al psochim and he doesn't have all these things which then you have to give, yeah.
So the chiv is at 10%, and then if you ein yofa is it 50? Is it 20%? But the chiv is over 10%.
10% is a beinani, and ayaru is less than that.
There's no real. So it's not a chiv of 10%. It's just it's a beinani.
It's a beinani. Yeah, it's a beinani. It's a beinani is 10%.
So the chiv is what? Just giving him something.
Giving, yeah, but more than matuna me'etas, because matuna me'etas is tamazu a choif to give, because if not, you have a problem of the lavam. So giving a shuva prita, that's in any case. That's in any case. Yes, you have to give because then you don't have a lavam. But even if you give a shuva prita, if he needs more, you have to give him more. What? Over there comes in ayru less than a maser and beinani maser and ein toiv choimish.
There's no specific amount. It's just
no specific amount. No.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
No, there is an extra loch. But that's a tzibur. Okay, now let's see for whom should I give. Now we're going to talk whom should I give a person. But for instance, I took off masa, I took off choimish, I have tzedakah money. Where should I give it first? Kedimas b'tzedakah. Now there's a lochas shechlorach. Who comes first? Who comes afterwards? And a person has a right to give for a korov first, even if the other oni is more desperate. But sof kasof, the person has the right to give for a korov first. A korov koidem. So Shecharorach says, Simarashni in Aleph, Siv Gimel, the first, the most important person to give tzedakah if they are in need is your parents, your father and your mother. This is the first thing which you need to give. Number two is your children, hagedolim, big children, you married off children which cannot afford, and you can help him. So that's the second priority whom you should give. Bonav ibnois hagedolim. And it's interesting. This Daichemet in Pasashilchen Mareches Habayis, he writes that that's also grandchildren. Nachadim. Number three is a grandfather. A grandfather. And committing children is a bigger priority than a grandfather. But but clearly. But again, number three is your grandfather. Number four is your sibling, your brother from your father. Brother from your father is the number four, which comes for other things. And Lamasa is mashma ocht in biragru. The biragru in Tzedakah over there, he brings from a Tosefta that it's mashma also a girl. Although it's tight brother from your father, that means your sibling from your father. But the Gro says it means also your sister, a sibling from a father. Number five is sibling from your mother. That means you're not from the same father, but from the same mother. And it's interesting that in Charles Yeshiva's Givas Pinchas writes that a brother from your mother's side, not from your father, that means a sibling from your mother, comes before your nephew from your father. That means your brother's son, although it is from your father's side, which always father's side is much closer to a person in a Chesierisha, it's considered more korav. But since it's a sibling from your mother, although it's after sibling from your father, but a sibling from your mother still is before than a sibling of your brother. Although when it comes to Yerush, it's not like that. Like Abba Tzedakah, a sibling from your brother, it is ahead. Then anybody which is a korav, shar kroivim, that's number 6, and the shach brings down Simarash Mem Zayin Sifkut Aleph, that also your ex-wife is Bechlal Kroivov, and it's Bechlal Kroivov, and therefore she comes also before other poor person. When it comes to relatives, first cousins or whatever it is mashma, there's no din kadima. Whatever you prefer, so you give it. So again, if a person has money and he has a parent, the first big chiyuv is to give your parents before all other people. And you have the right to give for them all your money, and then you gave your master, you gave whatever you have, and you don't have to give for other relatives, you don't have anymore. Then is your children, a gdoilam, then is your grandfather, then is your brother from the father's side, then is a brother from your mother's side, and again, it's not only brother, the guru says also a sister. Then there is shar kroivim, and that's included girish usoy, and then all other kroivim. When you have two cousins, which are the same cousins, two first cousins, as I mentioned before, basically mitzat kirva, there is no preference one over the other. Shtayt aber in Shulchan Aruch that Talmud Chacham comes first. So we have to always remember you have to the same level, and you can give only for one. A Talmud Chacham comes before the other one, even if so that should be Talmud Chacham. If you have a brother, a sibling, a brother and a sister are in need, and you cannot give for both, only for first person, the sister comes first, because it's much a bigger shame for she should have to go around and collect money. A woman to go collect money is much more hard, but again, it's only in such a situation that she has to go collect money. So she's more ashamed, she comes before than your brother. But if your brother is a Talmud Chacham, then the brother comes first. The Tzedakah Mishpat, which is, as I assume you know, Tzedakah Mishpat is Rabbi Yankel Bloy. He made a whole sefer on, famous Rabbi Yankel Bloy made a sefer on one of his forum, a lot of forum. One of his forum is on Tzedakah. It's called Tzedakah Mishpat. He writes that when we say relatives, kroivim, relatives, comes before other people, it is also relatives of your wife. Although it's only harai at relatives, it's only through your wife, but again, that's considered also relatives, and they come before other people.
So in the same order, as in
what?
They would have the same.
If you don't have on your side, so then they're considered. When it comes to kroivim, when you say you have to give kroivim, that's the same. No, yishver shviger, not necessarily. When you have kroivim, then she is also considered kroivim. Now then, kemivin, you give her parents before her brothers, but akaponim, they are going also in the gang of the category of kroivim, and they're going to kedimas.
So like the theoretically the in-laws, parents-in-law, or grandparents-in-law wouldn't come before your nephew. Is that what you're saying? They would come only after. Like the hierarchy in different categories, yeah?
Yeah.
Preferences. So is her relatives have the same importance as the husband's, or do they only come after all of the relatives of the husband's, and her relatives are important? Yes,
exactly. Only when it comes to kroivim, the last darg is kroivim, shar kroivim, over there pops in her kroivim. But again, that's rein halachadik. I wouldn't advise you to go that way, because again, as a person Lamasa has the right to give for whatever he wants, It's only preference. It was the Shechanot says. So again, if you have your wife's parents on your needs, I would advise you that make sure that they should be at the first priority because you want shalom bayis. There was once a two people were chiyuvim, and in one of the in a shul, one is a chiyuv had not chiyuvim, yortzeit. One had yortzeit on his father, and one had yortzeit on his shver, his wife's father, parents. And there was who should be down for the ummah. So they asked the Rav over there, who should down for the ummah? So the Rav says, your shver shviger comes before your father, and you should the guy who has yortzeit, the guy who has yortzeit on his shver, he's first, then you have yortzeit on your father. And everybody was shocked because yortzeit on his father, that's basically first priority. Yortzeit, that guy has only on his shver. It's not a yortzeit. So the Rav answers, his name was Tzelem Rub, he's a very smart, holy person, a very smart, clever guy. He said, listen to me. You have yortzeit after your father. If you're going to learn an extra Perek Mishnayos, you're gonna make up with your father. He's that's going to be fine. But that guy, when he comes home after davening, he asks his wife's going to ask, did you daven for Amud for my father? And he's going to say no. All the answers that there was no Amud, somebody else was there, without helping you, you break your shalom bayis. So therefore, he comes before you. So if you understand the Nikida, the same thing will be over here. If your wife's parents' needs, then make sure that again you should make sure that they should have. Shchainam comes before Aniya Irchu. A shochan, so after all, is also considered in Kroivim, and a person has the right to give for a shochan more than Anshair. Toishvai Eitz Yisrael comes before Toishvai Shar Chitzluris. Not Toishvai Irchu. Toishvai Irchu basically is not, according to most poskim, comes before everything else. But if not Toishvai Irchu, it's a person which is a poor person from Eitz Yisrael, and you have other person from other town in Chitzluris. Toishvei Eitz Yisrael comes before Toishvei Chitzluris. It's interesting, the Chassam Sofer writes in his Shiva that Toishvei Yerushalayim comes before Toishvei Shar Rutzes. If you have two people, one you could give only for one person. One comes from Yerushalayim Yid, and one comes from Tveria for Tzvas. Yerushalayim Yid comes beforehand. Okay, so this is a private person who wants to give his tzedakah. This is for whom he could give, whom he should prioritize, who can he give, and who should he give before a kedima. Now we're going to go sigay tzedakah. What kind of tzedakah? Which is basically not necessarily what you on a private citizen. Because a private citizen, since it's his tzedakah, a person has to have. So he can give for whatever tzedakah he wants. If he decides to give for a poor person, so then we just mentioned the priorities, father, grandfather, all these things. That's only when he wants to give for a poor person. But if he wants to give tzedakah in general, not necessarily for oni, what should he prioritize? That's up to him. Whatever he feels. He wants to give for a mikveh, he wants to give for a shul, he wants to give, that's his decision. Person has to give whatever he wants to give his tzedakah. But now we're going to go, the Shechanot says, who is the Gabbat Tzedukah Mechiv to give? You have a Gabbat Tzedukah, he has $10,000 in his bank account. How to prioritize to give tzedukah? What kind of suk tzedukah is you should give? Not people, what kind of people to give first, but what kind of tzedukah you should give first. So the first darga is tzedukah lepidyon shvuim. If there is money, $10,000 in a bank account from the Gabbat Tzedukah, you have pidyon shvuim. The first thing comes with pidyon shvuim. That's one of the choshevste tzedukahs to give, is pidyon shvuim. Number two, giving for children to go learn Torah. That means basically giving for a cheder in order, not a cheder is also a thing, but over there you're going into other kind of tzedakahs because there's for a building fund. I'm talking giving children. If you know you have a child which basically doesn't learn Torah because his parents cannot afford to pay tuition and they kicked him out from the cheder, that's to send a child to cheder to learn Torah. That's number two, after pidyon shvuim. The same level is a poor person which has nobody should care about. He's not the first time, nobody knows about him. You know about him. That's the same level as number 2 after Pidyon Shvim, or people which even there are people who do it, but they are ra'ivim, they are hungry, they're now basically, they came, they're starved, they have nothing with to eat, or they don't have clothing, which again, today's day, I don't know if there's such a thing. That's all on the second category. The third category is giving tzedakah to marry off poor anias people, marrying off girls which are very poor and they don't have money to get married. This is more than Ravchas Aniyim. This is a tzedakah which comes before the giving for ani more than he needs. You know, if he's if he has food for the table. The Shach, the Sivkot Yid Aleph says, he says it's only if she's a Yisoim. If she's not a Yisoim, she's not in the third category. So according to the Pashtas Halacha, any girl which is a Anias and she cannot get married, you should help her get married. According to the Shach, it is only if she is a Yisoima, then she's number 3, and it comes before other tzedukahs. But if she has parents, although they don't have, they cannot marry her off, it is not third priority. It is like all other tzedukahs. It's like Ravchas Aniyim. That's a lower category. The first category is giving for a Beis HaKnesses. That's before Ravchas Aniyim. Again, Ravchas Aniyim means giving for the only more than what he needs right away. Giving him, he should live a more comfortable life. So giving for Beis HaKnesses is the fourth priority before Ravchas Aniyim. Over here, there are some poskim who say no, Aniyim comes before Beis HaKnesses. Now, when we say Beis HaKnesses, does not mean there is a shul in town and 10 people decided they want to make a shul which they can daven b'avoida, or they want to make a shul which they are basically not going to talk by davening, which is a very important thing. Again, you have to also decide if it's kedai to make machlokas just to walk away because you want to daven b'avoida, and if you have, or if the shmuzing is shul. Again, I'm not going into the subject, but again, we're not talking about this. We are talking a community, a new community. There isn't a shul. They daven one time at this basement, one time at this basement. It's in such a case, Zug de Shaivet Leivi, only that's considered Beis HaKnesses that you give it, has a priority before Ravchas Aniyim. But if it is not, because there is no shul, Zug de Rav Osner in Shaivet Leivi, Chalik Tes, Simakif Tzadik Tes, it is not before Ravchas Aniyim, and Ravchas Aniyim comes before. If there isn't a mikveh in town, and Mekan Chaz v'Sholom people will basically over of Isikuras, it comes even before Talmud Torah. So Pascal Moshe Feinstein Yeridaya, Chalik Beis Simakif Tezvov, building a mikveh in a place where there isn't a mikveh, and if there isn't a mikveh, a local, there will be some women with Rahman al-Islam will not travel to go to mikveh. That comes before Talmud Torah, that comes before Beis HaKnesses. That's one of the most important things after Pidyon Shvim to give for tzedukah. Now, when we said Pekich Nefesh, we have money, let's say, to save one person. There's a couple of people in Pidyon Shvim, but there's only one person which you could bail out. Steht in Shulchan Aruch, a person comes before a lady. A male comes before a female. Although we mentioned before, when it comes to giving for a person which goes around, a female comes before because the shame is bigger. But le'imazeh, if a person is a shuvi, who, for instance, Rahman al-Islam, now they have Yidden, which are basically in Hamas's captivity, and you could save a person. Who comes first? A man comes before a woman. And the reason is basically Although giving food and clothing, a woman is before. And the reason is because we are afraid, chas v'sholom, that they basically will be abused, sexually abused. And it's a bigger sham, it's a bigger bizoin for a male to be abused than a female. So therefore, a male comes before a female. Now again, whatever we just mentioned, whom to give, pidyon shviyim, besek knesses, that's on the Gabbat Tzedakah. We have a Gabbat Tzedakah which has $10,000-$15,000 in the bank account of Kippus Ezra, and he wants to know how to prioritize it. That's what he has to say and has to give. But if you have a person that has his own tzedakah which he gives, he has the right. He has toivus hanua, shtayt klor. He has toivus hanua. He could give for which on he wants to give and which tzedakah he wants to give. Now again, if he wants to give, prioritize his kerovim. We mentioned how to give it, but he has a toivus hanua that a private person. So like this, a private person has to give according to kerovim. That we mentioned before, father, grandfather, siblings. That's a private person. That's the kedima. But when it comes to what kind of tzedakah, pidyon shviyim or other things, that's a din gabbat tzedakah. It's not a private person. A private person can decide, I want to give for oni more than I want to give for pidyon shviyim. Although the gabbat tzedakah has to give pidyon shviyim is number one, a private person can give it wherever he wants. Now, when he gives it for aniyim, then he has his priorities, which the Shechnoch says of his family. But which sigay tzedakah? It's only a din in gabbat tzedakah, and there is not a din in a private person. Now, vice versa. Giving for your parents or for your grandparents is a din only a private person. In a gabbat tzedakah has no chiyuv. That means if you have a gabbat tzedakah and his parents are poor, he has no chiyuv to give his parents more than other things because it's not his money. Only a private person, he could decide when it comes, he has the chiyuv of prioritizing the kerovim, and he doesn't have the chiyuv of the sigay tzedakah. And a gabbat tzedakah has the chiyuv of sigay tzedakah and doesn't have the chiyuv of kedimas tzedakah. Is it clear till now?
So the private person, he has a chiyuv to follow that order or that the recommendation.
No, Pasha shechanoich mashpes as chiyuv. It's a kedimas. He has to give for his kerovim more than someone else. Yes. Okay. Next.
So if it's somebody he knows he wants to help, until he helps his family, shouldn't help the other person, or
again, what did you say?
If it's somebody he knows that he wants to help, it's not part of his family, not a neighbor, somebody else, another community. Privately wants.
And he has parents of the siblings which needs, then you should give for your parents or for your siblings before that guy. If you have giving for everybody, it's a commitment. You should give for everybody.
You turn down the other person.
He has a lot of money. Yeah. Now again, I'm not talking giving a priti. Shuva priti you have to give for everyone who asks you. Have this in mind. Shuva priti you have to give for anyone. But I'm talking about you have money, you have a master envelope, or master bank account, whatever it is. Over there, you should give kedima where to give tzedakah. Okay, now a person, some halachas, general halachas, which is kedai to know. A person gives money in a pishka, in a tzedakah box. Once he gave the tzedakah box, is it considered that he gave it for an oni, and therefore he cannot change it? Therefore, he cannot borrow money from that, or no, it's not considered. The money doesn't belong. For instance, you have a tzedakah pishka, tzedakah box for a beis Chabad, or for a Tom Chetemim, or for a Siddur Shabbos v'Yontav, whatever it should be, or who make chassan almonas v'yisoim. Tzedakah pishka your house, you put in $20. Now the question is, does it belong already for this moiset? and you are going to basically, you cannot change it, or it's not yet, I can still change it, or can I lend money from there or not? The Shulchan says, a person says, Harai sela zi letzduka, or Harai olai letzduka, and he is mafreshit. Yeah, that's the halacha Shulchan Aruch. Sim Rashni in Tesif Aleph. If a person said, I'm going to give $10 for tzedakah, or basically he took $10 and says, this is going to be for tzedakah, zug the mechaber like this. If it didn't get yet to the hand of the gaba tzedakah, you can still give, you could still change it. I want to give tzedakah. I want to give now. I want to give for someone else. And then he can also borrow it. If it came already to the gaba tzedakah, to the hands of tzedakah, then you cannot borrow it and you cannot change it. You cannot do all these things. So the question is now, I give it, I put it in a pishkin, and a tzedukah box. Is it as if that the tzedukah box, the moiset got it already, so there you cannot change it or cannot lend it? There's only one way, by the way, that if you are going to lend it and the moiset will gain from it, that means I give, the gaba tzedukah cannot lend the money which he has for tzedukah. He cannot invest it. He could invest it if the tzedukah will get more money, but he cannot lend it, borrow it. It's not his money to do that. If it's l'te'eles ha'aniyim, that means if he has, let's say, he has a budget, what he gives for aniyim, and he has extra money, and he wants to invest it, l'te'eles ha'tzedakah, he could give it, he could lend it. Yeah, that's the halacha. That's the halacha Shulchan Aruch. But if it's not l'te'eles ha'tzedakah, he wants to borrow $10 from a pishka, are you permitted to borrow or not? Are you permitted to change or not? So we have a big machloikas achronim on this question. What is the question? The question is, this tzedakah box belongs to this moiset. It's the kaila shel hakohen, but it is in your house. So in Beloshna Shulchan Aruch, kaila shel hakohen b'rshis hamoicher. You're going into a store, yeah? Going into a store, and you buy an item. It's the guy for Tfilas Kailim Alat. You buy an item, yeah, and it is still in the rishis. Oh, and he put it in into your keli. Put it into your keli. Now that means you are koine it, so therefore you can toivel it, or no, it's still the keli is still you walk out, or until you pay the money, it's still the moiches, and you cannot toivel it because it's still the moiches. And the moiches does not toivel it because it's not his. It's not his for using, it's his for selling it. So there's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch, a machloikes, kaila shel koine b'rshis moicher, if he's koine. If I put in something, I want to be makna for you a chayfetz. So I'm putting it into your keli, but your keli is in my house. Is it koine or not? Because we know kaila shel odam is koine. If I put in something, and if I'm going down the street, and I find my friend, and if we make a deal, he gives me $10, I give him a pen. I'm putting it into his handbag or into his bag. That's the chola dayas. He's koina. It's in his kaila. He made a kinyan. It's kaila. Bershis hakoina is koina. What is if this is not under shis haram? It is bershis hamoicher. Is kaila shel koina bershis moicher koina or not? The shach says yes, he's koina. He's putting in his kaila, even though the kaila is bershis hamoicher. It's koine, it's fine. The Nesivas says no. Kaila shel koine, if it's b'shis hamoicher, is not koine. So we are talking now a tzedukah box, which belongs to a moised, belongs to a Beis Chabad, belongs to a charity organization. It is in your house. If you put it in $1, it is kaila shel koine b'shis hamoicher. It's still in your possession. It's in your house. But is it still koine or not? So if you will say that you're putting it in the pishka, it is like the shach. The moiset is koine. You cannot borrow money over there because it is already came to the shis hakoine. shis of the moise. It's kili came to the shis of gaba tzedakah, and if it's like the nasivas, you could borrow it. Since it is a machloek zapoiskem, the achroinim pasken that you should not lend any money from the kippah tzedakah. You should not lend anything from the kippah tzedakah because we have a machloek. Because according to nasivas, hat es noch nicht solche gewesen. The only way how you could lend, only way, even according to the shach, is if you put in a note that basically for sure 100% that you're not going to forget, and there is kedai also the poskim right that when you give it back the halvor, you should give back a drop for your own. There is no schreiber that you give it. That means if you lend $1, give $1 a nickel. If you lend $20, give $1 a nickel or a dime. So therefore, the moised gains by lending the money. And as I mentioned before, the Shulchan Aruch writes that if there is a te'elas for the aniyim, that the gaba tzedakah should basically lend the money, then in such a case, you could lend the money, even according to the shach. So therefore, if it comes a time that you have to pay for the cleaning lady, and you don't have any cash, and in the pishka there is money, you could lend money with two conditions. One is a condition which you have to make sure to write in a note. I took over here $10 and I'm chayav to the tzedakah. And the second of all, when you give back anything more in order that it should be some kind of gain from the tzedakah. That in order in such a case, you should have an offer for the aniyim. Lamaisa. The Pesach Shiva writes in Sifkut and Dalat, as nowadays it is the minig is to be lehukel. You're more lenient to lend money because in any case, lev bezn masna that we are giving tzedakah with that night that we have the right to borrow money. So it's much more easier. But again, you have to put in a note that basically you lend money and you should give some extras. That at least to be yoitze all the shittas that they have a hano by lending. Now another thing is very important. You have a kippah tzedakah, and now again to going back to the other question, if you once you gave it in, could you give it for other moises? No, because since according to the shach it belongs already for this moises, you cannot change it. According to the sieves, you could change it, but according to the shach you can't. Since the machloekas, we are machma that once he gave it in to a tzedakah pishka, which belongs to you cannot give it for someone else. You have a kippah tzedakah, which once upon a time is a very popular thing. All moises used to give you charity boxes, and they used to have twice a year a person used to go around, collect the money, emptying it out. Nowadays, it changed. People do not, moises do not give that much of charity boxes, and you don't rarely see people should come and go around giving the money. But in our time, and if there is a place which it can happen in stores. Sometimes moises put down in a store a pishka, or whatever it should be, and nobody comes to pick it up. A lot of time it goes a year, 2 or 3 years, nobody comes to pick up this tzedakah pishka. So the achroinam, which is the tzedakah mishpat, Tzitz Eliezer, Chayim Moshe brings it down, and the Ba'asorim, all of this boys can say that if the moises, after a long period of time, the moises does not come pick up the charity box, it is as if that the moises from sich miyash gewein, it is as if the moises doesn't exist anymore, and then you could change it to other tzedakah. If they come once a year, twice a year, that's something else. But if it went through years that didn't come, you have to look at it. It's a shaila which it constantly, but the people which are older than 50 have this shaila constantly, that they have 20 pishkas at their home, my balanes, with that Moses, and nobody comes picks it up. Now, I always had, my mother had to tell me, please do me a favor, go over to that Moses, give it to them, all these kind of things. But halachidik, if they don't come, they stop coming and pick up the tzedakah pishkas, and you have a pishka, it is as if they're mesiyash, as if there is no Moses anymore. And according to all this poison which I mentioned, which they pasken, that it is as if the miyash, once the miyash, you could give it for other Moses, and you don't have to run after them. They should come pick it up. Kedai to call them up and say, please pick up, we have a pishka for you. And if they ignore you and they don't want to come, then you'll eventually give it away for someone else. Chazal darshan, no soin titoin, afila mei pa'omen. Now the question is, you have to give tzedakah even 100 times, and even for the same oni. So what is, you have a person went through a whole shul, he came to you, you gave him. Once he finishes, he remembers that I didn't go to some people over there up front, so he goes back to the front, and he comes by mistake, goes to you again. Do you have to give nosan ticket even my pomen, or no? Once he gave him now in the matzah which he came, I'm not talking if he comes again for a different chasana, or he comes again for a different. He comes now. It's a shayla which happens constantly. He didn't realize the guy goes went through again. Do you have to give or not? Is in the Sefer Oirech Tzedukah, which is a Sefer of Halacha Tzedukah, he brings from reminiscent Karelitz that since nothing changed by this oni in this time, so therefore once he gave him, you don't have to give him again. So if he comes for a different reason, if he comes for or even a different time with a different reason, then you have to give him again. But if it is, for instance, the halacha says he ate today, tomorrow he's hungry again, you have to give him again. But if a shleimer guy came, he ate for 4 weeks, and he comes this week, and next week comes again. Halachically, once he gave him for his tzvek, which is marrying of his children, for this marrying of his daughter this time or his son, you don't have to give him again. And you're not over of an asir, because nothing changed in his matzah he gave for this matzah. If it comes a different reason or a different time, means a time for which automatically is a different reason, then there's a chiv to give another time. But if not, you don't have to give al chiv. Now, should you give? Yes, you give. The Moshe wants you should give. But according again, we are quoting all these halachas because we want to avoid the loisas, the two loisas. We want to be mekayim the mitzvah sasai. In such a case, you didn't give. You're not mavatl mitzvah sasai, and you're not over of the loisas. Okay, just another point before we finish is in Machna Ephraim, the famous Machna Ephraim on Rambam, the Bafraim Nevon, and he writes, he learns it out from the Rashba, that if there is a table and the Oni came to one person to ask tzedukah and not to other people, only he is mechiv to give. All other people are not giving. He didn't ask me, and remember, in the beginning of the shir, I gave such a scenario. You're sitting by a chasana, a poor person came, and he asks you, and he missed you. He didn't ask you. Do you have a choiv to say, hey, listen to me, I want to give you? You want to give is a vadigit, but do you have a choiv to give tzedukah that you're mevatel tzedukah? So according to Machna Ephraim, which he holds that if he didn't ask you, your potter, says even if you ask someone else, since he didn't ask you, you are potter to give. But just to bring to your attention, as I mentioned, there are poiskim which are choilik on him, disagree with him, and holds. And since you know that he's a poor person, and since you know that he is indeed, because he goes around, therefore, even if he didn't ask, you have a choiv to give. So in such a case, kimiven, it is kedai to give, because according to some poiskim, you might be mavatla mitzvahs esen over v'lois esen. Final halacha is that according to the Arizal, you should not give tzedakah at night. You don't give tzedakah at night. Tonight is a time of dinam. You don't give tzedakah at night. Shtayt in the poiskem, that's only giving tzedakah and a tzedakah pishka, which you don't have a person in need coming to you. If a person comes to you and he's in need, there's no such thing as I'm not giving tzedakah at night. Then you give tzedakah. You don't put it in a charity box tzedakah at night. You can wait till tomorrow. But if a poor person comes to you and asks you for tzedakah, and over there the Arizal does not say, and that's not considered that you give an Eile, because that's a choif to give. That's a chiv to give, because if not, you're over beloisasa and you're mavat mitzasasa. So in such a case, kemiven, you should give. Famous story of the Rebbe. A person came over to the Rebbe. I'm not sure if he came, a poor person came to the Rebbe, or the Rebbe put it in a charity box. One of the two, I don't remember. And the Rebbe gave tzedukah. So a person over there came over to the Rebbe before the Rebbe was a Rebbe. And he came over to the Rebbe and says, don't you know that the Arizal said that you don't give tzedukah at night? So the Rebbe mentioned this story to the Friediger Rebbe, that you have a guy, I gave tzedukah, and he came over to me, don't you know you don't give tzedukah at night? So the Friediger Rebbe smiled and said, the people who come over to be ma'oire you, that you don't give tzedukah at night, do not give tzedukah even in the morning. So just to know that, in this anyonim, you don't have to be very machmar. We're not, But again, that's only putting in tzedukah pishka. If an ani is right away over here and coming to you, we're not talking about that. In such a case, of course, that you have a choif to give, day, night is no different, because he's going to walk away and you can't give tomorrow. Sharti box, you give tomorrow, don't give tzedukah tonight, and you give it tomorrow. So that's basically the Hilchas Tzedakah, which we went through. Upcoming week in Yetz Hashem, we'll go through the Sigi of Masik Sufim, which is very, very important. Halachas, what's the Chiyuv, and what could we give from what do you give Maser, from whom do you give it? All these halachas we're going to go through in Yetz Hashem next week in detail. Does anybody have any questions now for Hilchas Tzedakah? For now, should unmute himself and ask if they have.
Just curious, are we going to talk about Reish Mem Ches next week? Similar Reish Mem Ches? Are we going to?
If we're going to talk of Reish Mem Ches, which a big amount we went through.
I'm just trying to understand something.
Reish Mem Ches we went through.
Yeah, I was trying to understand the first sif there. It says, and the Shach says that
Yeah, we're gonna get this to Masik Sufim. We're gonna get that to that. Yeah, we can get to that. Yeah,
thank you.
That's part of the Masik Sufim of this halachas. Yeah. Okay, good night. Have a wonderful week. And hopefully, Be'ez Hashem is Burach. We'll meet again next week. Call to.